Hey everybody, I wanted to announce and make available version 5 of my ATEM SuperSource animated macro scripts. This is a project I've been working on for years. It's been available publicly for about 3.5 years, and as it always has been, this is still going to continue to be free. So I'll talk more about how to get it later in the video, but I want to do a quick demo. So for those who are not familiar with this is a way to animate the SuperSource feature on quite a few different models of ATEM switcher. So the SuperSource feature is one that allows you to have up to 4 different windows on screen, 4 different boxes on screen with different video sources, and my software allows you to animate those in any way you want. So unlike some of the other products that are out there, well, first of all, I don't charge for mine, but also mine has a ton of different layouts. I'm including 163 layouts in this version, and you can freely animate between any combination of those. You're not stuck to animating from A to B. You can go A to D to whatever. You know, you have complete total flexibility. The software is intelligent in the way that it works, is it looks at basically whatever you have currently on screen and then does whatever it needs to in order to do a transition from that to a layout. So with that said, I'm going to do my first transition here. So now instead of just seeing me, you're actually able to see my overhead camera as well, and you saw that animate from one layout to another. I can animate any of these transitions that I want. Can define which ones I want to keep, which ones I want to have quick access to on keypad. In this case, I'm using X keys controllers, and that has kind of become the preferred way of doing this. X keys are reasonably low-cost controllers that have a lot of different buttons. You know, the smallest one is 24, the largest one has 128, and you can basically do whatever you want, because the Just Macros software that I'm using with this is basically a real programming language, and so you're not limited to simple do this one step, do this other step kind of things. You're actually able to put logic in there, and that's what has allowed me to actually make this work. I can actually query the ATEM switcher to see its current status and then write code in order to make transitions from one to another. What I'm doing here is really just scratching the surface of what that combination is capable of doing, but just wanted to make mention of that there's a lot of power here because it has the power of an actual programming language behind it, and that's what allowed me to do what I'm doing here. This is version 5. I've had 4 other versions that have been available in the past, and this is probably the biggest update of any that I've ever published. And a lot of changes, a lot of new things going on here, especially things that would relate to using this in a virtual event environment like doing Zoom calls. I've really added a lot in order to make that workflow work a little bit more smoothly, give you a lot more power, and I'm going to demonstrate that here today. So I'm not going to go through all the steps of setting this up. I've kind of explained that in some of the other videos in the past, but I will show a few things in the code a little bit later about how to do some of the new cool things that are possible here. I should also mention that these things can be done without having an X keys controller. It's a little harder to do, and it can be made to work with BitFocus Companion as well. It's a few extra steps, but it can work. The downside is because Companion really isn't a programming environment, you're limited in how much interactivity you've got, and there's no way for Companion to basically query the switcher and then act differently based on its current status. So in order for this whole thing to work, we still have to use Just Macros. What we're doing with Companion is we're using Companion to send commands over to Just Macros in order for it to do the necessary work. First thing you'll notice is I've got an entire keypad here, minus 7 buttons, so this is an 80 key panel, so 73 different layouts, SuperSource layouts that are on here, and I can press any of these buttons and it instantly jumps to that particular layout, as you can see it on the button. So the first thing that I should mention here, let me make this, there we go, is that the download now includes a PDF that has all of these button labels in it. So if you wanted to print those out and put those on your own X keys controller, that is now available to you. And in addition to that, if you choose to customize your own layouts and add your own layouts to the software, you can actually send me your script file and I will generate a PDF for you, so you can print your own labels as I have done here. Okay, so that's one of the big updates. So you're actually getting the PDF with the different layouts. You don't have to use it obviously as a button label, but you can use it as a reference sheet. So it's there if you need it. As mentioned, I'm also including 163 versus the previous 110 different layouts. So I just keep adding new ones all the time. And with the changes I'm going to be demonstrating and showing here today, that number of layouts could actually be considered a lot more, because there are now some modifiers that can change those layouts in ways to make your workflow more suited to what you happen to be doing at any given time. So with that said, let me demonstrate a couple of those things right now. So on my controller here, I have 3 buttons that are toggles. These can be turned on and off. The first of these is what I call zoom mode. So I'm going to press this, and then I'm going to hit the same button I used to recall the layout before. And what you're going to see happening is you're going to see the top and bottom of the windows shrink down a little bit. They're going to crop in just a tiny bit. So there we go. That cropping that it's doing right there happens to be the exact amount that's necessary in order to hide the command bar in a Zoom conference, a Zoom meeting. If you're running on Windows in 1080 resolution with font size set to 100%. If you need another value, you can actually customize that in the code. There's instructions in the download for how to do that. But this makes it very, very easy in order to cover that up. You know, sometimes those things just pop up mysteriously in the middle of a call. You can't do anything about it, so I've got this new mode on here where you can actually just hide that. That is a toggle, so you can press it on and off. So if I turn it off and press the button again, you'll see those windows expand out just a little bit. And it crops on both the top and bottom in order to provide a sense of symmetry. It isn't necessary to crop out the top, but just to make sure that things look right, it does crop them both. It doesn't crop by as much on the top as it does on the bottom, but you can actually customize that in the code for this product if you'd like. The next one I want to demonstrate here is horizontal flip. Okay, so if I go back to this layout right here, this layout is a little bit weird because I'm looking off into space. It would make a lot more sense if I was on the other side of the frame. And so that's what this horizontal flip button actually does. So I'll press it once to turn it on, and then I'll recall the same layout, and you can see that that layout is now flipped left for right. And you can leave that on if you want, and the main reason you might want to do that has to do with the way that I actually designed these layouts. So for the most part, the layouts do go from left to right. So the left side of your screen is generally going to be, over here it's generally going to be source 1, then 2, and then 3, and then 4. And sometimes that just doesn't make sense. And so what I've done is I've added this horizontal flip feature in order to reverse those layouts. So for example, this is layout with sources 1, 2, 3, and 4. I press horizontal flip, recall the same layout, and now it's 4, 3, 2, 1. And so that makes it very easy to reverse a layout, which effectively doubles the number of layouts that we have within the software. Alright, the next one that I wanted to mention is add margins. So if I go to a layout like this one, where there are absolutely no margins between the two sources, that might not necessarily look that great, and there might be situations where you want to have some margins between your different sources. So what we can do here is press add margins, and then I'll recall the exact same source, and now it is adding a slight border around those sources in order to give you a little bit of space, a little bit of breathing room. Again, all of these different things are toggles that you can turn on and off. The zoom mode stays on continuously once you turn it on until you turn it off. The other two are active for the next transition only. So if I hit horizontal flip, recall a layout, it's already on that one, but then I hit it again, you can see that it's now back to the non-flipped version. If you want it to stay on, what you can do is you can press and hold the button for about a half a second, and then it will stay locked on until you press the button again. Same thing with the add margins as well. So that way, if you know you're going to be doing production where the layouts need to be reversed for the entire time, so you've got a situation like this where the person that's on source 1 is kind of looking off to the left of frame, and you want to put them on the right, you can turn on that horizontal flip for the entire duration by pressing and holding that button. Okay, there are some other cool things that I've added in this version as well. As mentioned, I've got this keypad that has 73 different layouts. The way that this is handled is actually quite new. So I'm going to turn off the horizontal flip for this demo. I can recall any of these layouts just by tapping the button, but I also now support press and hold, as I demonstrated on some of these others. But with these layouts, if you do a press and hold on that, it actually does that horizontal flip for you automatically. So you don't have to constantly turning that horizontal flip on or off. You just press and hold, and then it recalls the layout with the horizontal axis flipped. So I can just keep doing that by pressing and holding. Now these buttons are kind of different than some of the buttons that I've used in the past. If we take a look at my keypad over here on the right, these don't have specific layouts on them, and these are actually programmable. And I've covered that in the past, but just in short, what you do is you make sure that, first of all, you make sure that your SuperSource is not on your active program window. And then at that point, you can actually start cycling through the 163 different layouts that are there by pressing this SuperSource layout button. You go through those one at a time. If you want to go in reverse, you can hold down Shift and press SuperSource layout, and that will go in the reverse direction. But when you find one that you like, you can store it in one of these buttons. With old versions of this software, in order to store it, you'd hold down Shift and then press the button. With this new version, it's a press and hold. So just for sake of discussion, I'm going to take this current layout and I'm going to store that in SuperSource 9 on this keypad. So press and hold for about a second, and now that layout has been saved in that button, and I can recall that at any time. So recall this one and then press that new button I just barely programmed in order to get to this layout. You notice that it's actually horizontally flipped. That's because when I stored it before, the horizontal flip was on. So if I wanted a horizontal flip again, hit that button and then hit the button to recall that, and now we're back to where we want it to be. I may in a future version restore the horizontal flip setting as part of the presets. I just haven't gotten around to doing that in this version. Now, so making that change actually allowed me to free up the Shift button for these layouts, and that brings me to my next bit of new functionality that's part of this system. So traditionally, this system has only allowed us to do animated transitions from one layout to another. Well, that changes with version 5. With version 5, we can now actually do cuts from one layout to another. So it's not an animated transition from one to another. So in order to take advantage of that, we actually use the Shift key. So if I hold down Shift and I press, say, SS7 on this keypad, you'll see that it just jumps from one layout to another. Same thing, I'll go back to SS6 here. It just cuts from one to the others. There's no animation. So that gives you a little bit, that gives you an opportunity to not always do the animations from one layout to another. Kind of break things up a little bit. And sometimes there are events that we do where having the animation might be just a little bit corny, a little bit cheesy, and a cut is more professional. So you're able to do that with either the preset buttons over here or these dedicated layout buttons that I have over here. So horizontal, Shift, horizontal flip, Shift, recall the layout, and that cuts the layout just like that. So you're able to recall a layout without having to go through the animation if that's what you want to do. So anyway, those are really the highlights of what's new in this version. There's other tweaks in there as well to kind of improve the quality of the animation, giving you some more options in terms of how that ramps up and ramps down. That's new in this version, and just some general lifestyle improvement, easier to use, better experience for the user kind of things. Now, I want to demonstrate just very briefly how to configure some of these buttons, because some of this stuff has changed because of the ability to do the press and hold. That requires us to program the buttons a little bit differently. And speaking of that, in this version I'm actually releasing the XML files of my layouts that I have on my controllers, the 3X keys controllers that I have here in my trailer. So if you look, so I've got these two that are here in front of me, but I also have right back here, there we go, the 128 key version as well. So in part of the download, I now include those layouts, so you can use those if you want, although they will definitely require some tweaking of your own in order to make them work for your particular situation. They aren't so generic that they're going to be useful right out of the box. All right, okay. So let's talk about how to program some of these buttons. All right, the first one we want to talk about is we want to talk about programming these dedicated layout buttons, because this is the biggest new feature in the new version. So you notice here that this is an 80 button controller. In order to program this, we kind of need to understand how X keys does their layouts. So if I actually click over to here, there we go. So you can see here how they number things. So with these X keys controllers, they start numbering in the upper right corner, and they go down from top to bottom, and then they work their way from right to left. So it's 1 through 8 in the rightmost column, 9 through 16 in the second column from right, all the way over to the left column where it's 73 through 80. So that's just actually kind of the way that the X keys works in Just Macros. They do this kind of weird numbering. So as I'm doing demonstrations about how to program things, keep that in mind. So when I refer to button 3, I'm not referring to this button right here. I'm actually referring to this one, 1, 2, 3 right here. And if I was to do button here, this would be number 9 and so forth. So keep that in mind. All right, now with that said, let's actually go to some of the code. Now, before we can actually program anything, we have to have the Just Macros software installed. I don't want to go through a lot of steps on how to do that, but go to justmacros.tv to download the software. The free version works just fine for this, that you don't have to have the paid versions in order to make any of this work. So you're able to get the software from there, and then you want to go to my website, and using the link, a link that I'm going to provide later, you can download the zip file that contains all the files that you're going to need. You'll go to the instructions.pdf, and it'll tell you where to copy the files in order to make all of this work. And once you've got that, you can then launch the Just Macros software and start to configure the buttons on your X keys controller. Alright, so we have Just Macros installed, we've got our X keys controller plugged in, we've got my code loaded into Just Macros. Let's now make an assignment. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take and we're going to program button number 3, 1, 2, 3, and we want to program that as a specific layout. In this case, I've got little numbers on here, and it's number 146. So we're going to want to modify this button so that it recalls layout 146. All right, and the way we do that is, well, first of all, we need to get to the point where the X keys controller is talking to Just Macros. In order to do that, we are going to go over to the X keys tab of the Just Macros software, and I'm going to do this very briefly. We choose our controller in the upper left hand corner here, the one we're controlling. I actually have 3 plugged in, that's why I have 3 showing up there. We want to grab this unit identifier that shows up right here, and then we come over here and we're going to want to say add profile for, and then we're going to select the type of controller that we got. So this is an 80 key controller, so I'm going to choose that. And at that point, we've got a new profile, say profile 7 in this case, and then with the unit identifier that we got just a moment ago, we're going to want to fill that in here. So type 11 and then click update. I've already got one set up here, so I'm going to clear this new one out. But that's the gist of how you get started in order to make these things talk to one another. Alright, so we're going to program button number 3, and we want that, we're going to eventually have that recall layout number 146. The way we do that is we're going to come onto this list here. First, make sure we have our layout selected here, our profile selected here in the left, and then we're going to scroll down to the button number that we want to program. I don't know why that's highlighted. Okay, yeah, button number 3. And then we're going to click on Set Button Type, and then we want to choose Standard. And then what Standard means is I'm going to provide some Lua programming code to make the button do something. And what we're going to do from here is we're going to give that button a name. So we're going to say, in this case, LAYBTN 3, which stands for Layout Button 3. And then in the On Button Down window, we're going to paste in some code to actually do something. Now, you'll be able to get this code from the instructions.pdf that's in the download. So you can grab that, and then we're going to come in here and paste that in. And what this code is doing, first of all, these first two lines are telling it we're going to need some additional program code, and these are the files where you're going to find that. So the uses command here does exactly that. So we're going to use the DJ ATEM func and DJ Lua func files in this case. And then this last line here, SS layout down, is the new function that I've created to recall a specific preset. And we'll get into more in a minute about how you determine which layout that actually is. I said preset, I should have said layout. Alright, so in this case we're going to do button number 3, so it says SS layout button down 3 in parentheses there. If we were doing button 4, that would be a 4, and so forth. And then we need to paste in very similar code in the on button up event here as well. But instead of saying SS layout down, we're going to change that to say SS layout up. And again, this is button number 3, so we've got that 3 in there. With that, the button is actually programmed, and now we just need to go into the source code for the software to tell it which layout we want to be applied when we press button 3. So I'm going to press OK here, and that will save the code for that button. You notice that I've got all the rest here already, and if you use the XML file that I provided with a download, you can have those pre-programmed for you as well. But we want to come over to the macros tab, and I'm going to choose DJ ATEM Func in the list here, and then we're going to scroll down a little bit, and we're going to look for a section that's called SS Layout Button IDs. It's right here. Your file is going to look a little bit different than mine. I've got a bunch of additional stuff programmed in here, but this portion of it will be the same. Now what we have here, and the version of the download actually has comments to indicate this. This is the list of layouts that apply to the various buttons. So if I go back to my overhead layout here, button 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and so forth, all the way over to 80. Now in the code, if we look at this, that's what we're seeing here. So this first line under SS Layout Button IDs, those are buttons 1 through 8. The first two, -1, which are both set to -1, are because those are not layout buttons. Those are buttons that have other functions, which I'll get to in a little bit. So what I've done here is I've just entered the button layout IDs, layout numbers that are on my buttons on my controller. So you can see that I have 146 in the 3rd position, which basically means button number 3 is going to recall layout number 146. And as I go down the rest of the buttons that I have here in front of me, it's 54, 36, 35, 44, and 41, just like you see here in this code. Now if you have an X keys controller that has more or fewer buttons, you can adjust the number of entries that are in here. It just needs to match the number that you would have in that function call that we talked about a minute ago, SS layout down, SS layout up. The number that's in there, you have to have at least that many in this list. Now what I've done here is I've organized this list a little bit into groups of 8, and makes it a little easier to find when you want to change a specific layout. Okay. Once you've done that and saved the file, Control S to do that, by the way, that button should work. So, you know, if I was to press the button, there it is. That's the layout that we've just programmed on that button. All right, now go back to this one here. All right, okay. In addition to that, we've also got some other buttons that are a little bit different, which have layouts that we can change anytime we want. They're not pre-programmed, and we do that with these preset buttons. These are handled a little bit differently. I actually put 3 up on here, and just for sake of simplicity, without having to bounce between 2 different controllers, I'm going to program one of these layout buttons. We'll actually just do button number 1 here, make it nice and easy. We want this button to be layout 3. I'm going to cheat a little bit with a different number, but you'll see that here in a minute. Alright, so if we go over to X keys, again, we've got the proper profile selected, and button number 1. Again, it's a standard button, but you can see in here we've got a little bit of code, and again, you can find this code in the instructions.pdf. We want to paste that in. And I actually put number 203 in here, and the secret here is that those numbers can actually be anything. They don't have to correspond to a button number. They don't have to correspond to the label that you put on the button. Anything. It's any identifier that you want to use can be put in here. I'm using a 200 series number because I'm already using the 1 through whatever on my largest 128 key controller, and I'm using 100 through 199 on my 24 key controller. And so on this controller, my 80 key controller, I'm using numbers 200 and above. So I've assigned layout button number 3, which is X keys button number 1, to use 203 as the internal preset number. So it's what we call is SS layout button down, which number 203 in this case, and then we do the same thing with SS layout button up in the on button up event. And that basically tells the software that we're going to store a preset in slot number 203 and then whenever we hit that button, we want to recall that. Now, let me very quickly demonstrate how that's going to look. I can't give you a perfect view of it because I can't show you my preview window, but say if I go to my full source here, I can press the SuperSource layout button a number of times to cycle through layouts. I know you can't see this, but when I find what I like, I press and hold that button, and all of a sudden that's stored into that button. So if I press it again, you'll see that that layout is actually recalled. And now that button is stored in there, and I can change that at any point in time I want to as well. So again, you use the SuperSource layout and then press and hold in order to program that button in there. Okay, let's move on and talk about these 3 new buttons that I've just added, and these are actually handled in a very similar way. So we're talking about the zoom mode, horizontal flip, and add margins that I demonstrated earlier. Come over here into the X keys tab again, and I'm going to look at the code for the margins button. So that's the same sort of deal. You click on the button number that you want, click on set button type, select standard, and then you'll get to this screen. So this is going to be my automatic add margins feature, and this is the code that you paste in for that. So our 2 lines to include my library files, and then this function call is called toggle button down, and then the name of the button that we're toggling is auto margins. And then we do the same thing down here on the bottom, toggle button up for auto margins. So that will actually handle that. And if we want to go down to the button for a horizontal flip, that's button number 10 in this case. Click on that, and it's very similar. It's still that toggle button down, and the name of the button that we're toggling is called SSX flip, which stands for SuperSource X for horizontal, X-axis flip. So we put that in both the button down and button up in order to program a button for that function. And then zoom mode is actually very much the same way. So it's the same toggle button down function call with zoom mode as the parameter that's passed in there. And that's how you program those 3 buttons to actually do that. All right, there's one other thing that I wanted to demonstrate before I go, and that is creating your own custom layouts. So if the layouts that I provided, one of the 163 doesn't work for what you're trying to do, you can actually make your own. I've got instructions for doing that in the download, that instructions.pdf file, but I want to show you a little bit of a shortcut thanks to John Barker over at the Here to Record YouTube channel. He's created a tool for creating SuperSource layouts, and he's kind enough to make it compatible with my code. So let's take a quick look at that. So we want to go to layouts.heretorecord.com, and he's got this tool where you're able to do drag and drop in order to produce these layouts. So we're going to start with just this one box. I can move it wherever I want, and we'll say that's a little bit too big, so I'm going to scroll down here a little bit and then adjust the size. So I'm going to size that down a little bit, and if I want to add another box, I can click on one of these buttons here to turn the box on and off. And I'll grab that and move that up here, and we'll want to size that down a little bit. You can also crop these. So say we want this one on the right to be tall and instead of wide. And grab on that and move that, and there we go. So it's kind of a silly layout, but we'll go ahead and go with it anyway. So there we go. We got a layout that we want to use. And what we can do in order to include this within my script is scroll down a little bit here, and you can see that there's a section here that says DJP's ATEM SuperSource macro for just macros. What we need to do here is we need to provide a name. We're just going to call this silly layout, and then we need to give it a number. Now, the layouts that I've provided within my file are numbered from 0 through 162. So when you go to add your first one, you're going to want to number that one higher than that at 163. So I'm going to type in 163 there. And as we make those changes, you can see it's actually generating some Lua code here. And what we want to do is we want to copy that. So that's now been copied to the clipboard. And then from there, we can come over to the Just Macros software. We'll go over to the Macros tab, make sure we're in DJ ATEM Func, and then I'm going to do a search for 162 because I know that's the last layout number in the file. So I type in the 162 there. I'm going to click on the arrow to jump down to where that is, And then I've actually already created a custom one here, but I'm going to paste this new one in over the top of it. So I'm going to take what I just copied from John Barker's site, and click on Control V or press Control V to paste. And now it's pasted in that code, and then I'm just going to clean it up a little bit here and make it a little bit easier to read. So add some tabs in front of these lines. All right, there we go. So that makes it nice and easy to read. And then the other thing we're going to need to do is we need to tell this software that we've added another layout into the list. So what we want to do is we want it to go all the way to the top, and I'm going to use Control Home to jump to there. All right, so we come down about 10 lines here, and then we have this line that says num layout equals, and this number is basically telling the software how many layouts we've got. So when this file ships, it's 163. We just add another one, so we need to change that to 164. And with that, we press Control S, and now that layout we've just created would actually be included as part of the ones that are available. In fact, I'm going to go through. I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and I'm going to take that new one that I just added, 163, and I'm going to assign that to button number 3 on my controller. So I'll press that. And there we go. So we've got the layout that we just barely created on the Here to Record site. So you can also do this just by typing in these layout commands by yourself. But having that tool from John is going to make this a little bit easier. So thank you, John, for putting that together and making that available for people who are using my software. All right, with all of that said and brief demonstration on how to set that up, how do we get the software? Well, again, I am making the software available for free. I'm not charging anything for it. However, I am asking one thing of you. So when I originally released this software 3.5 years ago, I had the thought that by making it free, that people wouldn't be expecting me to provide technical support for it. Turns out I was wrong. And I, for a long time, was getting requests from people at least 1 or 2 times a day for help with this. It's a programming language. Not everybody in video is a programmer. So it has a little bit of a learning curve. It's not that hard, but sometimes people get stuck. And it seems like they were always reaching out for help. I don't have the time to handle that, unfortunately. So what I'm asking is that if you want to use this, that you actually go and sign up for Discord. There's a link that's going to be popping up here on your screen to get to a special channel that I have on my Discord server for technical support for this product. The download link for this product is also in that same channel. So if you look all the way at the top of that window, there's going to be a link in there that actually shows you where to download this software. So the requirement that I'm asking people to meet is that you make sure that you are in Discord, you've signed up for an account, and that by making sure that I only provide the download through Discord, then I know you have an account, and that way whenever you have an issue you can reach out for help there on that channel, and then I can help you there, or you can search for the same issue. You can search for solutions to issues that you're having within that channel, because probably the issue you're having has been had by somebody else in the past. So this is kind of a community conversation, and I'm relying on the community to help to make sure that people can actually use this, because the number of people that are asking me for help is more than I can handle. So that's the one big ask that I have. So if this is something that interests you, please go to Discord, sign up, and make sure you sign into my Discord server and go to that channel. And that's the only way you're going to find a download for this. The other thing that I would ask is if you choose to purchase one of these X-Keys controllers in order to make this work more smoothly and easier, that you do so using the links that I provide to do so. That's very helpful for this channel when you do so. All right, now the other thing I want to mention is that these X-Keys controllers are not technically required. You can do a lot of this just by manually triggering macros within the Just Macros software. It's awkward, but it can be done. And Just Macros can also be configured to respond to commands from MIDI controllers. So if you have a MIDI controller with a bunch of buttons, you can technically program it to call these as well. It's a little more work, and I'm not going to show you how to do that, but it can be done. The last one that I wanted to mention is using this from BitFocus Companion with the Stream Deck controllers. It can be done, and I'm not going to demonstrate how to do that right now because I've already done that in another video here on the channel, and you'll see a link to that popping up here on your screen. So if you want to use this with Companion, you've already got a Stream Deck, you can do so with some limitations. You know, you're not going to get the full functionality that you will by using the X Keys controller with the software that I've created. So with that said, I think that's going to about do it for now. And my voice is shot. I can't talk much more anyway. So I'm going to wrap this up. But again, thanks to the community for your support on this. I've gotten a lot of enthusiastic responses from people that have really benefited from this, and I've actually had some financial donations which have been very much appreciated from people who have been able to take advantage of this in their workflow. And that's amazing. That's awesome. So anyway, got questions, go to Discord. If you want to download, go to Discord. The links to get there are popping up on your screen and are in the video description down below as well. So I think that's going to do it for now. So thanks everybody for watching, and have a fantastic day.